Safety first. Please start the podcast before driving and do not interact with your phone while operating your vehicle.
Welcome to Impactful Dialogues, an Ecolab podcast that elevates inclusion, mindfulness, purpose, awareness, collaboration, and trust through executive conversation. I'm your host, Senior Vice President of Global Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Dexter Davis. Hello, everyone, and thanks for listening. Cathy, thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to our conversation.
Hey, Dexter, I really have been looking forward to this discussion. And, as I've been thinking about this discussion, I've also, realized we've had three people before me, right?
Yes.
And so as I've listened to what, Nick, Jen, and Jeff had to say, just a lot of really good stuff. So looking forward to doing what I can to add to the discussion.
Absolutely will, Cathy. And just for people to know, just to give a little background of who you are, you serve as Senior Vice President of Global Talent at Ecolab and really have a deep experience of leading global talent development organizational change efforts. And you also play a key role in our Ecolab's Executive Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Council. So you've done a lot here at Ecolab, and you continue to do a lot. And just getting to know you over the last couple of years, I think you like to do a lot. And I think that's really good.
I do.
And that kind of energy is good for somebody who's leading our talent here at Ecolab. So given that, I mean, you've broad experience in HR from working directly with the business, with functions, leading change efforts. But let's go back a little bit and think about earlier in your career at Ecolab, where you were the director of culture and inclusion here at Ecolab, which was a big role for us at that time. I think that was around 2008, 2009 time, around the recession, which was an easy time for all businesses at that time. So that's a perfect time, right, to lead culture and inclusion. And during that time, can you just talk a little bit about, go back in time and think about what that experience was like for you, and especially during a turbulent time, but how your bias for change and leader of organizational change either developed through that role or just what that experience was like for you?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Gosh, there's so much I could say about that time, Dexter. So I'm going to try to be concise and really pull out kind of the big points. First, in terms of context, the Ecolab of today is so different than the Ecolab of 2009. So we've made huge progress in our path to being a more inclusive organization. And so there's a lot to be learned by looking back through the time machine and understanding, what was it that really helped us make that shift? And the first thing that I'd love to point out is how important it is to honor the past and to really acknowledge the strong foundation that's in place. Nobody likes to work in a culture that feels like it's under attack.
Absolutely. Yep.
Right. And so there's a lot to be gained from really honoring what has gotten to where we are. And so it's really taught me to spend time learning and listening before I jump to conclusion, and really asking questions like, why do we do what we do today? Because normally there's a good answer to that.
Yeah.
It's our role as leaders to figure out, does that condition still exist, or do we need to shift? Right. So the first one is really honoring the past. And what goes along with all of that is listening. And Jen Bradway talked about it in her impactful dialogue, how important listening is. And so a lot of learning to be had there. And then as you move into action, is how to empower and engage a broader group of folks. And so we started with 19 inclusion change partners. I could list off their names, but I won't. And those inclusion partners were carefully selected, and their role was to really bring some of the culture inclusion work we were doing and bring that back to their functions, their teams, their businesses. So could have never done that on my own. And these inclusion change partners were really the spark. So long answer, but boy, there's so much more I could share.
Yeah, and I'd love to dig a little bit too, because I totally believe in honoring the history of the past and really getting an understanding of the why. This is kind of what I'm hearing do it, because I think as we continue to evolve from a diversity, equity, inclusion perspective here at Ecolab, those efforts in 2009 and probably even before that build up to us. So each time we're getting better and better and really creating that inclusive culture. So I think that is so important. And as I was looking at your history and the work you did in that role, one thing you did was serve some employee resource groups, and you think about understanding the history and how you build on that. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what that was like for the organization? Like, why did you see that was a need? And then how was that being a part of that really at the beginning as we were really starting to build up employee resource groups here at Ecolab?
I'd love to say I saw the need. I didn't see the need. I heard the
Mm-hmm.
need,
Good,
right?
good.
And so, that's that big piece again around
Mm-hmm.
listening is those needs will bubble up. And I'm a strong believer that we can do anything, but we can't do everything. And so
Mm-hmm.
how do you start to then say, where are those areas that are going to make that biggest impact? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a couple of things is during my time as director of culture and inclusion, one of the most memorable moments, and you and I have talked about this
Yeah.
before, Dexter, is seeing the Eco Essence in-person conference for the first time in the Schumann campus here in St. Paul. And for that group of Black and African American associates being able to look each other eyeball to eyeball for the
Yes.
first time, many
Mm-hmm.
times, was really quite motivating. Also at that time, we launched Pride.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because we heard how important it was for this idea of psychological safety, and I'll go back to what Jeff Burt talked about,
Yes.
right?
Good to hear you listen
Um,
to the podcast too, Cathy. So appreciate
I did, yes. I have a lot of respect for my colleagues. And so the need spoke to us, and we just kind of responded. And then if you can put the empowerment of associates to say, and how might we come together? Really great things have happened. And so you take a look at EcoEssence stronger than ever before.
Yeah.
Pride continues to grow and build, and on the regular helps inform my point of view and my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a little bit of what I learned.
That's awesome. As you were talking about that and all the things you did and during that time, not you, we as an organization did at that time and
Mhm.
really being a part in that role, those were really turbulent times externally.
Yeah,
And I say that because, as you know, you're a part of our Executive Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Council, and we're always paying attention to what's going on externally versus
yeah,
internally. We're in kind of the turbulent times when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion today. And I'd love to hear how, given all the external turbulence with the recession and everything going on, how are you able to keep the focus and do those things, even though the noise could be really distracting? I'd just love to hear your perspective of that.
yeah. I think that there is something that comes in the face of adversity.
Mhm.
There are solutions and there are creative approaches that frankly you can't get to without a little bit of tension. At least that's what I tell myself when I procrastinate and I come up with a really good idea. See, I wouldn't have
Yeah.
come up with that if I hadn't procrastinated.
Yes.
But humor aside, I do think that there is in tough times can often come come the best solutions,
Hmm.
right? And so it is about getting really clear on values during that
Yes.
time, because that's what steers us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If you've got your true north and you have a really clear set of values and your how you get things done
Mhm.
is aligned to that, then that goes a long way. So I'd say clarity on values is what kind of difficult times really help us do.
Absolutely. And I'd say that for us here today, that North Star of our values has really helped drive us. And that's why it's fortunate to be in an organization where that's where we really anchor on. And that's when, when you talk about listening to people, getting connected to people, we're a
Yes.
people organization. And I think
Yeah.
that really speaks to that. And it's important for us to do that. And adversity can lead to great things. It happens all the time. And I'm really looking forward to partnering with you as we continue to navigate everything else, because I think
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot of great things that come out of this as well.
Yeah. You know what I'd say is there's no finish line to
No.
that.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, as we think about listening to our associates, the HUMU engagement survey,
Hmm.
I'm assuming when everyone listens to this, it will be done and closed, but that doesn't mean the conversation closes, right? It only
Hmm.
just begins in terms of what
Hmm.
have our associates told us, what do we learn, how do we adapt? So it is a constant and dynamic process and one that never
Hmm.
ends.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Kathy, as you think about your career in your long career at Ecolab and your career at other organizations, I would just say for me, being in this role for a couple of years and coming to the team, you do a really good job of welcoming people, making sure they feel welcome. and really building out networks. And this is me seeing you, watching you do this. So how does that help you throughout your progression in your career? And why is that important? And especially diverse networks, because I think that's so important. It's always important to have people that may not think like you, look like you. How have you done that through your career? And how do you think that's helped you be successful?
Yeah, I have a fundamental belief that in the potential of each and every one of us. It's just a core belief that I've got. I
Mhm,
don't know where I got that. I don't know how I got that. It's just part of who I am, right?
mhm,
And along with that belief is some of us, myself included, just happen to get really lucky in life and have the right set of circumstances that was a little easier to bring out the best in me,
mhm,
right? And with that self-awareness then comes a sense of responsibility to create that environment as much as I can, knowing that I'm just one person, but
mhm,
as much as I can and how I can extend my impact to create that for others. So it's
mhm,
really about unleashing the potential that I
mhm.
see in our associates. And so, at Ecolab, we've got 48,000 associates.
Yeah.
And I feel really quite appreciative and lucky to be in the role that I am in today because I get to help shape and hopefully unleash the
Mhm,
potential of those 48,000, whether it's an associate that has been here for 35 years and how do we leverage the best out of her or his experience with us and
mhm,
what they've gained, or if it's someone that's walking in the door tomorrow,
mhm.
right?
Yeah, I would 100% agree, and I think that's a good perspective to have. And I think it's so important in the work we're doing, especially in human resources DEI, because it's just a big piece of as a people. And
Yeah.
I think when we think from diverse networks and how we develop, I think it's important that an organization gives you opportunity to do that. And how would you say that we do that here at Ecolab?
In a myriad of ways,
Yeah.
right? And so I even think about my time since I've been here at Ecolab. And the analogy that I often use is we've moved from being a town to a big city.
Hmm.
Okay. And so with that move to a big city, you've got to have the things in place, the maps in place where, the directories of people. So because you can't just rely on knowing everyone or being able to easily navigate. So as we
Hmm.
moved into the big city of Ecolab, we have a lot of solutions that help associates from a career development standpoint.
Hmm.
I would point each and every person that's listening to Career Hub on Workday.
Hmm.
Okay, it's an app that people can find when they click in Workday. And boy, does that show you just the world of opportunity that's here at Ecolab. And so you can put in not only the skills that you have, but the skills that you want to get. You can put in interests that you have in other areas or other jobs, and out pops possible mentors and people
Hmm.
that you can connect with, right? If you indicate career interests, it will suggest to you bite-sized LinkedIn learning or Workday learning. And so it's really much easier than you think it would be. Get
Hmm.
yourself on Career Hub and you'll find you got a lot of resources at your fingertips.
Absolutely. And I think that speaks to the initiative you've been really rolling out and really been talking about as well, win from within. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that? Because that really speaks to kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, it really does. And so, win from within, embodies this idea of we can all win from within Ecolab as we
Hmm.
think about our career and our development. But it also speaks a little more individually. We can all win from within ourselves, right?
Hmm.
And so, what that looks like for me, Cathy Lambert, is different than what it looks like for Dexter Davis, right?
Hmm.
And so we've got the opportunity in this large company of ours to really personalize what that
Hmm.
what that means.
I do think as we think about win from within and how to really unleash the potential of our associates, some of the pieces of which I know we talk about in the DEI council is how do we create that inclusive culture that allows people to unleash that? And we talked about psychological safety. But Jeff,
Mhm.
all those things create that piece and really create that opportunity for people to really unleash that potential. When you think back 2009, when you had that role around culture and inclusion, Why is that an ongoing, to your point earlier, I'd love to hear you say a little more about this. Why is that an ongoing thing and not in line to it? I mean, it's going. So why do we always got to pay attention to how we're doing from a culture and inclusion? Because we could have been in a good place in 2009, moving in a good place in 2012, but why do we have to be intentional throughout to make sure that we continue to improve and develop that inclusive culture?
Yeah, so here's what I would say is looking back to 2009, big changes, but let's just look back 3 years,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
let's talk 2020,
Yeah.
2021, and
Yeah.
what's happened with the pandemic. And
Mm-hmm.
we all know that this amount of change is going to continue to accelerate for
Mm-hmm.
us, right? And so the change curve goes from, we're going to try to get something done in the next 12 to 18 months to we're going to try to get something done in the next 12 to 18 weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
as that pace changes, we got to know that we got to try new things, do them quickly, learn where we can. If we fail, okay, let's try it again. And,
Mm-hmm.
and the only way we can do that is by really engaging and inspiring our associates. There is no other way. Top down just doesn't work anymore. We've
Absolutely.
got to really be all clear on the purpose we serve, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so protecting what is vital in the world,
Yes.
and how do we all engage in that in a very quick and nimble way?
Mm-hmm. Great. I mean, I think that's well said, Cathy, and I think it speaks to, as you speak and as you talk about our culture, as you talk about the work you're doing in talent, it speaks to the importance of why diversity, equity, inclusion is so part, and we
Yes.
work to embed it in these processes because these
Yes.
processes are people processes, and I believe
Yes.
people processes are the most important processes when driving a business. To your point, I love the unleashing the potential of our associates, and we can't do that unless we have embedded in us our diversity, equity, inclusion. I think that's something we're continue to strive for, and I appreciate your partnership in this. I appreciate being able to have conversations and figure out what can we do differently, how do we build off those things, and how we create an environment where we don't shy away from change, we embrace it. We don't shy away from adversity. We learn from it and grow from it. And I think that's a lot of what the work you've been doing in our talent team. And I really appreciate your partnership.
Well, Dexter, it has been a partnership, right? And
Yeah.
and not to get too personal, but you and
All
I
right.
have had
Yes.
some really quite vigorous exchanges.
Mm-hmm.
You and I have both have the same goal. We have maybe sometimes a difference opinion of
Mm-hmm.
how to get there. And I
Mm-hmm.
think you and I can both agree we are better because of some of the debates that we've had. I know I
Absolutely.
can absolutely say that.
100%. And I think you need that. And that's a test of the culture and how inclusive that culture is.
Right.
Because if you can't hear different perspectives and you can't understand the other person's perspective and bring those perspectives together and come with something better than you both could have done individually or a team could have done individually,
Yeah.
we're missing out. And that's what I
Yeah.
think is so great about the work
Yes.
you are doing
Yeah.
and how we got to continue throughout whatever's happening externally or whatever, that we got to continue on the path that really speaks to what makes us great as an organization, which is our purpose and our values.
Well, thank you.
Yes. Well, once again, thank you, Cathy, for the conversation. And thanks everyone for listening. Our next conversation will be with Rich Sponder, Senior Vice President of Human Resources, Global Supply Chain. We will discuss the role of allyship in promoting understanding and advocacy for underrepresented groups and its impact in his new role as executive sponsor for our Pride Employee Resource Group. So once again, thanks everybody for listening. And Cathy, really appreciate the conversation. I appreciate your partnership and all the work you do here for Ecolab and for our associates.
A big thank you. This was great.